Thanks. My name is Chris George. I'm the director of IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services. Happy Father's Day, happy Juneteenth, and happy World Refugee Day. This is an annual event celebrated around the world, originally limited to that one day, June 20th, but now we celebrate it throughout the month of June to honor courage and the resilience of refugees. And you're going to be hearing their stories today. Before I go any further, I want to thank the people who've made this possible, our great sponsors, and they have great names. One of them is Saffron Road. Round of applause for Saffron Road. Turquoise Mountain, thank you. Sanctuary Kitchen. WSHU Radio. The International Festival of Arts and Ideas. And this great venue, the Bushnell. Thank you very much. So, this is about stories, and I have a story. And some of you have probably heard it, but it's a story that connects what I used to do overseas for about 20 years with the work that I've done for the past 17 years, running a refugee resettlement and immigrant service agency. It's also a story that kind of explains why I do this work. So, spent a lot of time in the Middle East with a variety of organizations, Peace Corps, American Friends Service Committee, Quakers, Save the Children, and I visited a lot of refugee camps, even worked in some refugee camps in Pakistan, southeastern Turkey, refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, South Lebanon, even in Somalia. And I have a lasting memory from those visits to refugee camps. It might not be what you're thinking. It might not be that powerful visual of rows and rows of thousands of tents set up, or the powerful odor of raw sewage flowing down the streets, or the despair in the faces of people. What I remember is the amazing hospitality that refugees showed me when I visited. That's right, hospitality. They would find a chair for me to sit in, not realizing that I learned how to sit on the floor when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. They would, bring me utensils, not realizing that I'd learned how to eat with my right hand when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. They would literally roll out a carpet. Nothing as nice as these turquoise mountain carpets. But they would put on a pot of water for coffee or tea. They would send their oldest child down the street to buy a package of cookies. They would serve me their last bit of food. They gave me a lesson in hospitality and generosity that I have never forgotten. I mean, people who had lost so much. And they knew I was from the United States. Many of them blamed the United States for the situation they were in. But they set aside politics. The most important thing was hospitality, treating me like a guest. So, I would say, in the Arabic that I had learned as a Peace Corps volunteer, I would say, hey, if you ever come to the United States, look me up. I want to return the favor. I want to show you the hospitality that you've shown me. Now, I was saying this like 20, 25 years ago. I had no idea what I was going to be doing in the future. But as fate would have it, this has been my job, to work in an organization with the amazing mission of welcoming refugees and other immigrants from all over the world and helping them start new lives. So you all know, many of you know, in fact, raise your hand if you have been to an IRIS office or IRIS event. I'd like to get an idea of how many. Look at that, a lot of people. So volunteers, staff, great. And there are a lot of newcomers here. So for the sake of the newcomers, real quickly, our refugee resettlement program is a public-private partnership. Refugees are interviewed, selected, vetted overseas by the State Department, Department of Homeland Security, and it is a rigorous vetting process. For us, it begins usually with an email that says a refugee family of 4 or 5 or 6 from Iraq, from Syria, Congo, Afghanistan is arriving in 2 or 3 weeks. We usually have about 2 or 3 weeks to do what? To find an apartment, furnish it with donated furniture, stock the kitchen with 3 or 4 days worth of food, find someone who can cook a culturally appropriate hot meal to serve this family. Some of you newcomers might think, oh, what a cool policy. That must be Chris George's idea. No, believe it or not, it is a U.S. government requirement that refugees must be served a culturally appropriate hot meal within 2 hours of their arrival. The best U.S. government requirement of all time. So we get all of this ready. They arrive, the family arrives, at usually JFK. They're met by someone from the International Organization of Migration, gets them into a minivan. They come up 95. They usually get stuck in traffic. They arrive late. They're met by a case manager. We have a case manager here who's probably met thousands of refugees. I want to recognize her. Linda Bronstein, stand up, please. There you go. Thousands of refugees. Late at night, taking them to their apartment where they have that hot, culturally appropriate meal, showing them around where the light switches are. Here's your phone. Here's how to call 911 if, God forbid, you have to call someone in an emergency. Getting them settled. They have a good night's sleep. They come into the office the next day. We go over the program. First things first, connect you to health care. We're going to enroll your kids in school, help you learn English, help you find a job, help you keep that job. And before you know it, the kids are learning English beautifully. They're serving as interpreters for their parents. The parents are getting jobs. They're able to cover their expenses. It's an amazing program. We're honored, inspired to be part of it. And we have a kind of second mission at IRIS. Not every refugee approaches their work this way, but we do. So in addition to the services, we swing open the doors and invite people to participate. We think this is one of the best things this country does, and we think as many Americans as possible should be involved in it. Community engagement. Ann O'Brien is the director of our community engagement program. A round of applause for Ann O'Brien. You know, resettling refugees is really difficult, but with some training and some oversight, volunteers can do it, and they do a spectacular job. In fact, Connecticut has set an example for the rest of the country with its community co-sponsorship program. Volunteers coming together, communities all over the state, getting some training from my amazing staff, place a family with them, and they do a great job. So thank you all to the co-sponsors who are here. I think there are some co-sponsors who are here. A round of applause for them. All of the volunteers. But don't forget, the heart and the soul and the strength of IRIS is its amazing employees. Stand up if you're an IRIS employee, please. One more time, come on. An IRIS staff member, stand up, please. It's great. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started with the program. I'm going to begin by introducing Percy Stubbs. Percy Stubbs is the Chief Development Officer for Turquoise Mountain. You guys are wondering, what is this Turquoise Mountain anyway? Well, Percy's going to tell you. Turquoise Mountain, I'm going to tell you a little bit. Turquoise Mountain was established in 2006 by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. Yes, we got to get him to visit. Has he ever been to Connecticut? We'll work on that. The mission of Turquoise Mountain is to revive historic areas, traditional crafts, and communities, providing jobs, education, and a renewed sense of pride. They work in regions with communities where heritage is under threat, probably everywhere. Their original project was in Afghanistan, and now they work in Myanmar and Jordan as well. Turquoise Mountain has worked to restore and rebuild. These numbers are impressive. They have worked to restore and rebuild over 150 historic buildings, train over 6,000 traditional artisans and builders, and sell over $15 million worth of their work to designers, hotels, and retailers around the world. Round of applause for Percy Stubbs.
Hi everyone, and thank you to Chris and to everyone at IRIS. We feel so lucky to have stumbled upon the most wonderful organization, certainly in Connecticut and really anywhere that we've come across. So I just wanted to tell you a little story to add some color to the description that Chris just gave of who Turquoise Mountain is. And we have some photos to help with this story. So Turquoise Mountain really started in a place in the old city of Kabul, a neighborhood called Muradkhani on the banks of the Kabul River. And this neighborhood had been an incredible center of craft, art, heritage, and culture. And the hope was that by starting to restore some of these craft traditions and train artisans in these crafts and restore the buildings themselves, that we could bring some of that back to life. So this started about 15 years ago. And when we began, a lot of the buildings there was mud and rubbish sort of 6 feet high in the streets, and people would go into their house through the second-story window. And so it really began very simply with, let's try and clear the streets. So this is a before and during. Oh, sorry. So there's the process of clearing out the truckloads of garbage. It was 30,000 truckloads ultimately. And then the next photo shows sort of the middle of that process, and the next photo shows what it looked like afterwards. And then again, we have some other before and afters. You can sort of just keep scrolling through them, before and after. And we have some photos out where you were before and some designs of the old city. But basically, this was about taking these gorgeous old buildings and trying to bring them back to life. Now, just physically restoring them is only part of that. We put water supply, electricity, and sanitation down every street and employed thousands of people in these restorations, which not only left the neighborhood with these beautiful buildings, but also with the skills to continue restoring and preserving heritage buildings. This is the workforce on any given day, hundreds of members of the local community. And as we went along, it became clear that restoring these buildings was great, and then restoring the craft traditions, training artisans in these crafts was also wonderful, but the community had other things that they needed as well. And in a somewhat similar way to the way IRIS works, about addressing all of these different needs. It was about healthcare, setting up a community clinic in Kabul, setting up a primary school in the old city, and here are some of the students at the school. And all of this, I know a question that is on everyone's mind, maybe we could just stop on that slide for a moment. A question on everyone's mind is how much of this is still going today? And the answer is very nearly all of it. Afghanistan's in an incredibly challenging moment of transition, as you all know, and the way we got in touch with IRIS is that a group of the artisans and Turquoise Mountain staff that we've worked with for many years are now living here in Connecticut. And some of them are here today. We're going to hear from Hamid shortly. But back in Afghanistan, there are millions of people and thousands of talented artisans and their families that we are very much still working with. So these photos that I'm showing you today, some of them are older photos, but many of them are the primary school in session just a couple months ago, or the institute classes in arts and design just very recently. So just to give you a quick window into what do we mean when we say preserve and protect a craft, Well, this is a man named Abdul Hadi, a master woodworker, who was in fact a sort of famous artisan, woodworker for the king of Afghanistan years ago. But when Turquoise Mountain began work, sort of started trying to track him down, word of mouth, and found that he was selling bananas in the bazaar. This was his new job. He'd stopped practicing woodwork years ago, and it was all sort of finished behind him. And we said, well, if we could find you some students, some materials, some classrooms, would you start your woodwork again? Would you start teaching? And of course, he jumped at the chance, was thrilled to do it, trained hundreds of artisans in this beautiful, intricate lattice woodwork, which is called Jali. So the next photos have some of the other artisans that we work with: calligraphy, ceramics, jewelry making, wood carving, and increasingly we're working with carpet weavers as well. And that is because carpet weaving in Afghanistan is really one of the greatest hand weaving carpet traditions in the world, but it's also a huge economic lever. Because what we found in trying to preserve these crafts is that teaching someone to mastery level in a craft is the first step, but the next step to really make sure that a craft tradition lives is that it's a strong economic lever. It's providing jobs for the artisans and supporting their entire families. So when we say, Chris mentioned the number earlier of 6,000 artisans that we've worked with, that number is wonderful, but that's 6,000 artisans supporting their entire families. And many of them are starting businesses, employing other artisans, going to work in other craft businesses. So just a couple more photos here, I think. This is an example of the kind of work that a few of you actually commented that the crafts on display out there are so beautiful, such a high level. And that is very true. And in fact, we found early on, this is a 5-star hotel in London, we found that these crafts are world-class and that hotels, retailers, designers around the world want to source beautiful handmade crafts from Afghanistan. We also work in Myanmar and in Jordan with Syrian and Palestinian artisans as well. So this is just an example of the kind of commission that these artisans can do. And if you just scroll through the last few photos, this is, one of the calligraphers, Samira, who we worked with. I suppose I will just conclude by saying that the reason that we are so passionate about this project and continuing to work with thousands of artisans across Afghanistan and these other places, despite the challenges of the pandemic and the political challenges of the last year as well, is that these traditional crafts are incredibly resilient. And carpet weaving has continued for hundreds of years in Afghanistan, has continued through pandemics, through regime changes, through the previous Taliban regime, and there's every reason to hope that it will continue to provide livelihoods for many talented weavers again. This is our primary school in Bamiyan. I love that photo. That's a primary school that's still very much in operation today, despite everything. So the crafts are resilient, and the artisans who practice them are incredibly resilient. And that's true of the thousands of artisans we work with in Afghanistan, and with the artisans and their families who are now living here in Connecticut. There's a resilience and a strength, and as Chris said, also a graciousness and hospitality that is what is so inspiring about these artisans that we at Turquoise Mountain feel very lucky to work with. So thank you all for letting me tell that little story, and look forward to hearing the other stories today. Thank you.
Thanks, Percy. Okay, I want to introduce Hamid Hamid. Hamid is a cultural heritage expert. He's from Afghanistan. He's also a visual artist. And these days he's working as a graphic and print designer in a production company in East Hartford. Hamid.
Hello everyone, and thanks Chris for inviting me here. And so actually I just write it down chronologically because there's lots of dates in it and I need to go according to that one. So as Chris said, I'm Hamid Hamid. I'm from Afghanistan, and I have master's degree in visual arts and work with artisans for more than a decade back in my country. I worked with like TV channels, and also most recently with one of the international organization, Aga Khan Trust for Culture, and later I joined Turquoise Mountain, and I was lucky to work with Turquoise Mountain for last 5 years as a project manager. So back in Afghanistan, I had a wonderful life. With my wife and 2 kids. I was traveling a lot with different provinces, working with communities of artisans, men and women, also organizing exhibitions, as you can see in the pictures, exhibitions, events. I have many lectures in several universities and also work with young generation for many years. I was lucky that I had a chance to work with development. I was lucky that I had a chance to take part in development of the young girls and boys in many provinces, organized dozens of programs and events in the past several years. This was the good and the bright side of my life. But actually, out of that, there was a shadow that always followed me for the works I was doing, although I was not doing anything wrong. But that was the reality. I'm sure everyone who worked for past government or maybe for the NGOs or any development projects in Afghanistan, they have the same feeling with me and the sympathy. The shadow was the Taliban, trying to quiet any movement and that they feel it's against their mentality. It is obvious that there is no tolerance of diversity, and freedom of expression cannot be accepted by extremist groups. I was seeing many positive changes during the past 20 years. Especially big cities were growing rapidly in Afghanistan, and young generation were the workforce for positive impact in any aspects of lives. All in a sudden, after the withdrawal of international community, there was a panic among the people, especially post-Taliban generation, which was most of them educated and do not want to go back in the dark age of the Taliban. Starting from February 29th, when the peace agreement was signed in Doha between the United States and the Taliban, the security situation gets worsened. And the war did not stop, but even it's increased aggressively in the provinces and in almost all provinces of Afghanistan. June and July 2021, no good news was coming from the provinces, and almost half of the country was under the control of the Taliban, and they were storming toward the big cities. Although in the Doha peace agreement there was that the Taliban was not supposed to go to the big cities, but they did it. In last August, our office asked the employees to work from home, although there was no active fighting in Kabul, but overall people were worried, and psychologically the city was dead. The prices was going up rapid day by day, and the currency is dropping down. Sunday, August 15, when I woke up, the situation was not good. I believe there was only Kabul and Panjshir and few more provinces which was under government control, and the rest of the country was captured by the Taliban. I saw from my window a barber was wiping off the tattooed image of the shop. That really scared me, and it reminds me the first governance of the Taliban when they were controlling Kabul. Our president escaped the country, and it was around 12 p.m. I was looked back from the window, and now I saw the shadow got its real face. Now, I was watching a Talib, like a group of Taliban, was checking the cars passing in front of my building. After a week, after a week of the Taliban's arrival, I got a call from my colleague, like Mariam, she's here, calling me and proposed a short-term plan to leave the country for several months. And and observe the situation from the far from the back, and the country when it is safe, and see the country when it's getting safe. We should go back to the country, but it sadly doesn't happen. On those days, I was extremely shocked because I had job, my life was everything, and suddenly just everything stopped, and the Taliban got control in Kabul. So the call was very important, and I didn't think about that. I said yes, so I'm okay with the plan. Finally, I, with my family, left Afghanistan on August 24. It took 34 hours to get back to get to Doha with my 1-year-old kid and my 7-year-old kid and 2 backpacks, because there was only the limit that we could have with us. Story short, we were in an uncertain situation and did not know where we are going and how will be our future. September 15, we went to North Macedonia for 2 months. December 1st, we moved back to Doha, and we stayed in Camp Asilia, U.S. military base, for 3 months. March 9, we arrived in Virginia. It was, I think, around 3:30 p.m. And March 21st, I got back my home, but this time I just resettled in West Hartford, Connecticut. Past 8 months was all travels and very challenging, depressing, not for us, but the families that was evacuated by Turkish Mountain. Everywhere we gone, it was full of challenging. Sometimes we felt like we are in a prison and trapped in a military base, or maybe in a compound which was covered by fence or barbed wires in military base. This kind of challenges psychologically, it depressed everyone. But luckily, kids were happy, because there was some kind of entertainment programs or some kind of activity for the kids, although the kids don't know what's happening around them. But for the elders, it's different. They know what's happening. They had good life, good jobs. Everyone that were evacuated in different areas that we met with many people, they were not illiterate people. They were very talented. They were educated. They were working for the change in the country, but suddenly they just left Afghanistan with just one backpack and just moved to different areas. So although those areas always was controlled by police, which was sometimes we felt like we were guilty, we have some guilties. But anyways, today, I am with my family. We got back our freedom. We feeling very safe, very comfortable. And my elder son, Omar, is going back to school. And we are enjoying our beautiful life in this beautiful city, West Hartford. Thank you, everyone.
Lucky West Hartford. Great. Okay, I'd like to introduce Waruche George. No relation. Waruche was born in Nigeria. She came to the United States in 2005. She was granted asylum, and now she lives in Hamden. Waruche has degrees in law, journalism, and human rights from Quinnipiac University and Columbia. She is an author and human rights advocate, and she currently serves on the IRIS Board of Directors and as a community editorial board member of the Connecticut Mirror. Waruche George.
Hi, my name is Waruche George. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Zini, and everyone for inviting me. I'm going to talk about Juneteenth. Today we recognize it as a wonderful day. Juneteenth, what I celebrate today. More than 12 million Africans were brought to America on slave ships, with the first recorded ship carrying Africans to Virginia. The year was 1619. Juneteenth has been an important date, but sadly, many Americans were not taught its significance to African American history. Juneteenth marks the day when enslaved Texans found out they had been free for 2 years. It wasn't on that day that the enslaved were freed, contrary to what some know about this day in history. It marks a day that was hardly spoken about for a very, very long time in America. I was scrolling through my Facebook memories, trying to pinpoint the exact time I learned about Juneteenth. I have been living in America since 2005. In 2007, my asylum was granted by an immigration judge, and the wonderful Iris helped resettle my 2 kids and I. I would later advance my education while working and raising my 2 children. But I never heard about Juneteenth in any of my classes, and I promise I took a lot of classes. The fact that as a Black woman living in America, I had not learned much about the impact of slavery because we did not study Black history in Africa, in our schools back home, it's very sad. In the same way, African studies are only beginning this fall 2022 to be taught here at the high school level, thanks to Governor Lamont, who passed the Public Act. Not telling our stories fully causes our real identity to be shrouded in secrecy. This divide has kept us apart from learning about experiences that matter. As the years progressed, I would honor World Refugee Day on June 20th each year, marking a separate worthy celebration. World Refugee Day honors the strength and courage of refugees, people who have left their home countries for various reasons and have sought solace in a new place. Amongst the joy refugees and immigrants bring to their new countries are culture, food, fashion, language, and their unique experiences and perspectives on life that they so beautifully weave into the American culture. For many years, I would visit Mamoon's falafel store in New Haven to buy shawarma and hummus made from chickpea. I missed eating this back home. I used to eat that back home. I would also visit African hair salons and food stores on Dixwell Avenue to keep my culture alive. That's what I celebrated each year. The strength that multiculturalism brings to America, thanks to immigrants, and the desire to preserve our unique identities. That's what I celebrated. It wasn't until the year 2018 that I first heard the term Juneteenth from a post on Facebook. I would later celebrate my son's citizenship on the same day in 2019. From then on, Juneteenth was born in my world. It is important to tell stories. It is important to bridge gaps that have existed for centuries through storytelling. African Americans have long hoped for this day when the atrocious acts of slavery will be recognized. It's been a plea that this acknowledgement happens. Our shared identity as humans first was suspended without this acknowledgement of the pain the history bears. But today I celebrate this new story. Last year, President Biden formally made this a reality by making it a national holiday. This is the beginning of better things to come. Slavery remains a dark history, and by not acknowledging it, we strengthen injustice, inequality, and the ills of society. I'll read a few words I found online. These are words that were spoken by slaves who experienced the dark past. It's important we honor them. And this is by Fountain Hughes, age 101. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland. It says, "If I had any idea that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right there. Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog." another quote by James Green. He's 98 years old and was born in Pittsburgh, Virginia. And he says, "Then one day along comes a Friday, and that an unlucky star day, and I playing round the house, and Master Williams comes up and says, 'Deli, will you allow him walk down the street with me?' My mommy say, 'All right, Jim, you be a good boy.' And that the last time I ever heard her speak or ever see her. We walk down where the houses grows close together, and pretty soon comes to the slave market. I ain't seed it for, but when Master William says, 'Get up on the block,' I got a funny feeling, and I know what has happened." And Delisha Patterson, age 92, Boonesville, Missouri, she says, "I think the time will soon be when people won't be looked on as regards to whether you are black or white, but all on the same equality. I may not live to see the day, but it's on the way. Many don't believe it, but I know it." That's what I celebrate today, our shared identities, and that we're working together to alleviate injustices against various groups, our hopes and visions for a better tomorrow, our collective efforts to improve the world today for not just ourselves, but future generations, be they Africans, African Americans, refugees, immigrants, Asians, white Americans, Muslims, Christians, LGBTQ people. Today, I celebrate the connection to freedom that Juneteenth and World Refugee Day embody. That we can set aside differences and work together for the good of all. That we will commit to taking steps forward to right the wrongs and rise above the dark past. That's what I celebrate today. Thank you.
Thanks, Wadujay. Like many Afghans, Hawad Hamid worked with the United States government in Afghanistan because he believed in many of the changes that were being introduced. He believed they were good for his country. Changes like freedom of expression, civic engagement, women's rights. Hawad ran 15 radio stations in Afghanistan. He hired women journalists and religious scholars who offered a more liberal, alternative interpretation to the Taliban's reactionary and fundamentalist interpretations of the Quran. In 2012, the Taliban discovered that Hawad was the one behind these radio programs, and they went after him, targeting his relatives, threatening him and his family. Hawad and his family were evacuated and arrived in Connecticut in 2014. Here is his story. Hawad.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Chris, for having me at this great event. First of all, let me say Happy Father's Day, Happy John 10th, and Happy World Refugee Day. As Chris said, before I come to this country, I was used to working with U.S. forces as an operation manager for their media project. And I was the head of the programs. The 15 radio stations, it was U.S. military radio station which was installed at the U.S. forces COPS in FOBs. When I joined that project, that media project, so two important things I did which later on the consequences followed up me. One was I hired 2 female journalists to run women programs, talk about women rights, human rights. And I also hired 2 religious scholars, which they started talking about Islam, the real Islam, the peaceful Islam. And my job was to manage the programs. My job was to put all those good messages out to the local population, to educate the local population. And those, especially those young men, that they were never been to school, and it was really easy for the numerous insurgent groups that they were active in that country to hire them or just simply to get them to join their cause. So after successful those programs that we put out, so I felt the heat from the insurgent groups. They directly sent me messages that we know you, who you are, and what you do. I shared that information with my supervisor from the US Army, and after 30 minutes he told me, he analyzed the message, the threat, and he told me, you have to leave. At that time I was at the southeastern part of the country. I was working at the forward operation base Salerno. So I left my home state. I moved to the capital, Kabul, but still I continued to manage the project. But I managed the project by phone and online, emails, internet, everything, so I continued managing the project. And then, the meantime, I put it in application for special immigration visa program. Despite I was really extremely ready to join the US forces, it took me 2 years that my special immigration visa get approved, and I put an application in 2012 and I received the United States visa in 2014. And then I left the country. When I arrived here, I enjoyed all the good services, the best services from IRIS that Chris mentioned earlier. At the beginning, I was sad that I left my country. I was sad because I left a country which was, the future was uncertain. At 2014, I thought we are in the era that we will win the war, but when I saw in 2014, after the 2014, the rush withdrawal of the US forces, and also the enemy, they advanced, they captured many places around the country. So my fear was increased. I didn't I was talking to myself like, we fought for over a decade, but still the enemy is advancing. There were many reasons for that, why the things didn't change to good, why we were going to bad. I don't want to mention all the reasons, and I'll just mention a couple of reasons. One was the bad governance and corruption, and second thing was the original source of the problem was not touched by the US, by the United States and NATO, like where the original source of the problem was. So that was the two things that led us to the present. Now we have lost all the gains that we had in Afghanistan, and that was happened because of these two reasons. When I arrived here, at the beginning I struggled a little bit, but with the support of Iris, with the great support of Iris, I managed easily integrate to the community. I enjoyed the educational services from Iris, the health services. They helped me to connect with all the social services. They helped with my kids' enrollment to the schools. They helped me with the doctor appointments. Actually, at the first day when I arrived here, they gave me a key of a home which was fully furnished. It was a good living place. They helped me with everything. But one of the things which they couldn't help me, it was my relatives, my parents, which I was left them behind. But later on, I feel it like Iris is my family. Chris is my father age. So whenever I am seeing him, I'm feeling like he's my father. Linda is my mother age. So at the beginning of my arrival, whenever I had like any kind of sad feeling or confused with anything or I need help, so I was always running to Iris. And it was Iris who helped me. And with their help, I was easily integrated to the community. And Iris wouldn't be able and will not be able to easily provide all the help to the refugees if all those volunteers and other people who are supporting refugees in this country. Iris will not be able to do it alone. So your support, any help is very vital in this process. Unfortunately, refugee is in the politics of America, refugee is one of the core thing, which is one side of the aisle is supporting refugee and the other side is opposing for various reasons. But to my personal opinion, I will say it, refugee is that's happening in the United States, it's one of the best thing that's happening. I have many reasons for that. One reason is like these refugees that they are coming to this country, they're bringing talents and diversity and more good things. They're contributing back. But to me, one of the most important things is they're human. That's the most important thing. They're human like us. I'm refugee. I'm in front of you. I'm a human. We are human. We've been fled from our countries because of violence, because of fear of execution by numerous groups for different reasons. No one is willing to leave their country. No one is willing to leave behind their families. When I got here, I left everything. I didn't have anything. It was Iris who helped me. Now I have a lot of things. And being a refugee, trust me, just you guys try it at least for once in your lifetime. Go to another country which you don't speak their language, you don't know their culture. Just try it for a week or 2 weeks. Then you will understand how hard it is being a refugee. I was lucky that I had the advantage of English language. I was fluent when I got here. But many refugees, when they are coming here, they don't speak English. And they're struggling to learn English. They're struggling to learn the culture. They're struggling how the things work here. And things are very different that's happening here back in those other countries. So when you see a refugee, please help them. In any way, at least I like Chris when he all the time says, like, if you cannot do anything, just tell them hi, hello, how are you? That's also giving them a good feeling. Unfortunately, in Afghanistan, right now the situation is so bad. And one of the other bad thing is that no one is talking about anymore about Afghanistan. We are talking a lot about Ukraine. I'm not against of Ukraine, or I'm not jealous of Ukraine. My father is Ukrainian citizen, and my brother also fled from Ukraine. Now he's in Switzerland. Sometimes I'm thinking like I'm the unlucky person. But Ukraine is a little bit lucky than Afghanistan because the world is supporting them financially, the world is supporting them morally, the world is like supporting them with weapons, with everything. But Afghanistan is opposite. The world is now not supporting them anymore financially. They sanction them financially. That sanctions not affecting those people who are now in power because they have access to the resources of the government. But it's affecting the civilians who are starving. More than 25 million people marching towards starvations. I am receiving many messages on daily basis from friends, relatives, from even unknown people. They're sending me messages. People are very hungry. In order to survive, people selling their belongings, even their body organs, even their children. They're selling one child to survive the entire family. This is how things happening now in Afghanistan. And they are really unlucky people. Meantime, they sanctioned financially as well. Sometimes I'm thinking like I'm from the very unlucky area of the planet. We've been through 3 invasions, superpower invasions, since last century. None of the invasion worked for us well at the end. In 1918 there was British invasion, then in 1990s there was Russian invasion. Now it's US invasion, which ended up very badly for us. United States invaded Japan. United States invaded Germany. But the end was very good. I don't know why we are really unlucky. And why the things doesn't change for us. We cannot change a lot of things, this group of people that we are here, but we can change some things. We can change minds. And changing minds can change things. I am suggesting everyone that's here, please, in any capacity, if you can help. Even if you just say a story, if you just say this story that I said today, like Afghanistan is in a very bad situation, just say it to your friend, to relatives. Or also, if in any means, if you can help refugees agencies like IRS and other volunteer groups, please help them. These new arrivals that they arrived here, they all arrived in once, and the capacity of the refugees agencies they're overwhelmed. So in any means, if you can help them, please. Help them here. And also, some of you can also like help them to sponsor them, to get them here as well. At the end, I will just say, pray for Afghanistan. and safer Afghanistan. If you are talking with anyone or with someone, and I am suggesting the government that please, and instead of sanctioning the civilians, please sanction those who are in power, sanction them directly. There are tools that you can sanction them directly, and release the funds and the money to the civilians. Release it in a way that the civilians can get benefit, not the government. Because they banned girls from school. They banned women to go out from home to buy groceries, because if you are not accompanied by a male, you are not allowed to go to a doctor to do grocery. In last 40-year war, over millions of women, they are widowed. So where they get a male company now? There is no human rights, women rights, no freedom of speech, no freedom of press. The country is in a very bad situation. I hope the government hear this. Thank you everyone for giving me the chance to say the story.
Thank you, Joanne. Next, I'd like to introduce Gladys Mlelo. She's from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Gladys is a graduate of Central Connecticut State University. She recently collaborated on a newly released young adult novel called Each of Us a Universe. You want to get that and read it. Gladys recently became a U.S. citizen. Congratulations, Gladys. Just as important as that, she is the co-manager of the Iris After School program. So Gladys is going to be reciting some poetry and telling us her story. Gladys.
All right, thank you so much. Actually, let me clean my glasses so I can see you very clearly, because each one of you make a difference in most of us' lives, and we can't thank you enough. Just your presence even makes a difference in our lives. You being here itself makes me see how America is a great country, because it has people who have a good heart. There is no people who have a good heart everywhere. At the same time, there's also people who have a good heart, and each one of you are good people. I feel like this weekend we have so much to celebrate. We have a lot of things to celebrate. And celebration is one thing that always brings us together. Because as humans, we have to always be together to remind each other how we all have so much to teach each other, and how we have so many things that are in common with each other. So a little bit about myself. It feels like yesterday, actually, when I first moved to this country, when in fact it has been 9 years. I remember my first day like it's nothing, but it has passed. I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. At the age of 2, my family was forced to leave the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And then from there, long story short, we were forced to move to a neighboring country. As so many people just say their stories, as Hiwad and Hamid said their story, you really, when you leave home, we often don't know where we're going. And we often don't know if we are going to go back. Well, sometimes you tell yourself, oh, probably, maybe I'll go back. When things get better, I'll go back. But for most of us, we never return home. So imagine what it's like spending your whole life in Connecticut, but all of a sudden you're being forced to leave home. Well, I don't know what it felt like. I was only 2 years old. Didn't know how it felt like. But all I knew is I grew up in a country where I wasn't treated well, and that gave me a sign of saying that I wasn't a member of the country, or I wasn't a citizen of the country. And then we lived as refugees in Burundi for 13 years. And in that 13 years, as a life of trying to finding out who we are, where we belong, or where we fit. And that's what my family spent the time doing. And as a child, as I was, all I did was trying to understand, who am I? Where am I going? And where do I fit in this society? Some days you give up, and some day you find strength to keep fighting. My dad kept trying to apply to find a place where we could at least call home after leaving our own original home, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He applied. Some days he was accepted. Well, actually, he wasn't accepted. What am I even saying? When the United Nations application goes in, it takes a very long time. Some people live in a refugee camp for 13 years, some people 10, some people 20. I was lucky enough to be living with my own parents, but some of my siblings didn't. They had to be living in a refugee camp for a very long time. So long story short, applications being put in, denied. All the time they put in, denied. All the time being put in, denied. But how do you make a living if you can't even support your own family or being accepted in a country that you are considering to be your second home? Now as for me in Burundi. When we were accepted, finally in 2013, the news came in saying you guys are going to Connecticut. Guess what? I actually didn't even know how to pronounce Connecticut. I used to say Connecticut, but thankfully, Iris has helped me pronounce that word for many years. Moved to Connecticut at the age of 13, didn't speak the language at all, didn't know what was awaiting for me, didn't know what was going to be looking like as a teenage girl, moving into this big country, not knowing how to even interact with anyone else. But with the help of Iris and so many volunteers who were just around, just simple things such as smile reminded me that it's okay to be a teenage girl, it's okay to not speak anyone's language, and I have a time to learn. Iris helped my family. I helped my dad find a job. They helped me go to school, and that was the only thing as a teenage girl, being a teenager in Burundi, I prayed for. Education. Education is an important tool that can help anyone find a space in this society. And I remember the first day when Tanya's actually here, took me to do my school process paper as if it was yesterday. Just knowing that I was going to be given a second chance to go back to school was a gift that I will never forget in my life. Because with my education is the only thing that empowers me to be the young woman I want to be, or to be the woman I want to become in the future. So these past few days, because we are celebrating so many things, I'm not going to make this whole event about myself, but moving forward, I will start to make every single moment of my life as a way to recognize every human that has made possible for me to be here. And today, I will start by doing that. This year, I'm not going to make this special event about myself, but this year, I'm going to dedicate this event to people who shaped and guided me into a woman and the human I am today. I will do that every year differently. For me, one of those people is my papa. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers, to all the super dads in here. And I see you trying to calm your son right there. He's keep bugging you, Hamid. Happy Father's Day to all of you and to anyone else that has a child. Today, I want to acknowledge the bravery and strength of refugee and immigrant fathers who've sacrificed everything to give a better future for their children. Through their eyes, I always see resilience, perseverance, and dedication. I'm fortunate enough to work with some of them, and every day as I pass to them as they are doing their job, they keep encouraging me to even work harder. So today I'm going to talk about my dad a little bit and every other fathers out there, not just refugees and immigrants. I prepared a poem for that. Once known as an architect, my father. Once known as the anesthesiologist, my papa. Once known as the con chef, my baba. Once known as the educator, my abu. One day, his title, his kindness to the communities he served didn't matter, because he became a victim of persecution, a victim of famine and violence, a victim of conflict and corrupt government, a victim when only his children mattered. They are the fuel that fuels him to swim across the Mediterranean Sea. They are the strength that strengthens him to climb the US-Mexico border. Even when safety was dark as the color of midnight, my father, my papa, my baba, my abu, he endured the obstacle and humiliation to get me to safety. Even when bullets rained on us, he acted as a shield to protect, because I am his protector. Because he is my protector. He cried. He cried in tears of vulnerability. Not because he's vulnerable, because he's not used to being vulnerable. His shoulder were my safe and warm ride. His arms were the soft and sweet pillow that kept me dreaming. Because behind a refugee child, there is a father who paves the path for us. Not easy for Father's Day. Now, because we have so much to celebrate, not just fathers, there is another thing that we're celebrating. So I remember when I first came to this country, I was so confused with all the marches that were happening in this country. At first, the civil rights movement was taught in school, even made it worse, confusing for me, because the lessons were taught very vaguely. Like Waruche said, where I come from, we don't talk about black, white, none of that. Growing up as a kid in Africa, all I knew is thinking, where do I find my next dinner? Or how am I going to pay for my tuition? The life of white, black wasn't something that we talked about a lot. With the help of Iris' staff, Laura and Ashley, now my colleagues, I found a way into understanding racial disparities in this country. And that being said, I can't ignore the fact that I'm a woman, I'm a refugee, and above all, I'm black. So I wrote something that I prepared to share with you guys today. As young, as innocent as I was, I didn't speak colorism, and I don't think that word exists in English, but I just had to create it. As young, as innocent as I was taught to celebrate humanity because we all one humankind. I didn't speak blackness. I was taught to celebrate humanity because we all one humankind. I didn't speak black, white, Hispanic mix because we all one humankind. I didn't speak blackness or whiteness because we share this one land. We share this earth that nurtures and molds us into the people we are. Color or races such as language didn't exist where I come from. I never heard of such language, not until I became a refugee in a country known as a nation of immigrants, the United States. A nation where our national anthem says, "We are the land of the free and the home of the brave." Are we free? They said this nation is where dreams come true. That's very true. Most of our dreams come true. They say this nation is where everyone is equal. Are we equal? If we are equal, why are we still marching on our streets with signs that says Black Lives Matter? If we are equal, Why are we still protesting, asking for visible equality? If we are equal, why are we still answering race questionnaires in our college, job, scholarship applications? Are we equal? Day and night, people still fight for racial and social justices, so future generations can be free from hate, free from toxic language, free from separation of humanities. Because we all, children of this earth, and the color of our blood is the same. Thank you.
You know, it's often been said the primary reason the U.S. government has a refugee resettlement program is really to save lives. But we see today, and those of us who work in refugee resettlement see every day, that the bonus for us, Americans, is they enrich ours. Thank you all for enriching our lives. All of the speakers today, thank you all. We have another celebration today. So Father's Day, it is Juneteenth, it is World Refugee Day. We're going to celebrate the opening of the Hartford office, Iris's Hartford office. It's been open for a while. It took a while, but we call it a satellite office, but it is really a standalone office. I don't really see it in orbit. It is stable. Tanya Kimball, the director of the Iris office, do you want to come up here? Tanya, where are you? Tanya. You don't feel like an astronaut in orbit, do you? No, it is. So the Iris office director, Tanya Kimball, has a few words to say.
I am deeply uncomfortable with public speaking.
Well, get used to
So
it.
naturally, here I am. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. I am also grateful for this opportunity. I haven't had an opportunity such as this to say thank you. It has not felt for a minute like Iris came to Hartford and began refugee resettlement work. That is not what happened. We joined a community of people who have been doing the work. It's been happening. We're working alongside you, and I feel honored every day. Gladys, Hamid, Hawad, you've changed my life. Each of you in very different ways. I see how you live this spirit of welcome that Chris was talking about. It's not something that happens just at a doorway. It's something that you live. It's something that you do every day over the course of your life. And you each are changing this community with how you live. Thank you.
Tanya has been with Iris for 12 years? She's worked in a variety of jobs, and she was really the ideal person to shift up here to Hartford and be the director of the office. So, we're not going to toast yet because not everyone has something to toast. But I just want to thank a couple of people who have made this event possible. And they are Zini Malik and Kelly B. Please stand up. Where are you? Zini, yes, they're working now. Great. And I again want to thank our two primary sponsors. Again, they are Saffron Road and WSHU. So thank you to Saffron Road and WSHU. Thank you also to our partners, Turquoise Mountain. You all know what Turquoise Mountain is now. Sanctuary Kitchen, the International Festival of Arts and Ideas, and the Bushnell. Thank you very much, the Bushnell. You guys have done a great job. So again, a round of applause for our sponsors and our partners. Great. All of the wonderful people in Hartford who are going to be working with us, thank you for your support. As Waruche said, stories are important. They connect us. Thank you for coming. Stay connected. Hello. There we go. All right, Bushnell, this is when you turn the music up. Thank you all very much for coming. We'll see you around. Happy Father's Day, happy Juneteenth, and happy World Refugee Day. And happy Hartford office.